That like broke so easy.
Huh. They're spawning up there.
Oh yeah, he's definitely a spawner. Oh yeah. YouTube, what's up? Back again for another daily fishing tip video here on Andrew Upshaw Fishing. Today's video is going to highlight a technique and a bait that I've done extremely well with, won a lot of money with, but it's something that tends to get overfished, and you'll understand exactly what I'm saying here in just a second. But if you haven't yet, drop down and hit that subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner. I would greatly appreciate it. And also, drop me a comment of your favorite bait. I don't care what it is. Drop it down below. What is the #1 bait that you have tied on every time you go to the boat ramp and ready to launch your boat? What is that one thing that you know you're going to catch a bass on? Make sure you drop that below. Like the video if you can and share it with a friend. Appreciate it, and I hope y'all enjoy this video. Alright guys, so today's video is going to highlight one of my favorite rigs out there, and that's throwing a Wacky rig Ocho, or Wacky rig stickworm. You know, there's a couple different ways that you can rig a Wacky rig stickworm. You can rig it either Nico style, which Nico style uses the rubber band, rigs it in the middle, puts the weight in the head of the worm, or you can rig it weightless, where you hook the hook dead middle of the worm, you know, horizontal, it's going to fall horizontal, or you can use like a flick shake head. A flick shake head is a weighted head. You still rig it in the middle of the worm. It still has that horizontal fall, that, you know, that slow fall, but it's a little bit faster because you have a weighted head. So that's the 3 different rigs that you're going to fish your Wacky rigged Ocho or stick bait on. So when I won at Cherokee, I caught 95% of my bass using a Wacky rigged 4-inch Ocho. The way I was rigging it though was on a flick shake head. So the flick shake head gave it a little bit of weight and allowed that thing to fall and have its deal. So what I mean by overworking it is, a lot of times as fishermen we have a tendency to throw a bait out and we wait a couple seconds and we start moving the rod and working the bait back. Okay, and if you see here in a couple of these clips, one of the most important things you do with a Wacky rig is let it do its job and let it do what it's meant to do. And so when it falls, no matter if it's rigged on flick shake head or Nico rigged, it's going to have a very unique fall. So what you should allow it to do is do its fall, accomplish its goal of falling. You know, the flick shake head is going to fall faster. It's going to have a really cool shimmy. The Nico rig is going to actually twirl down a little bit. But the worst thing you can do to a Wacky rig is start shaking it as soon as it hits the water. I mean, absolute worst thing. Because what it's going to do is it's going to pull that bait up. It's not going to let it fall down to the bottom. And a lot of times, especially in situations where you're fishing for bedding fish, you want that thing to fall all the way to the bottom. So if you watch some of these clips, I actually cast it out. I throw a bunch of slack in my line. I want that thing to have its most natural fall as it physically can, especially on spinning gear. So I want it to fall down, and as soon as I think it's hit the bottom, maybe had it, you know, set out there for a few seconds, I'll actually start shaking my slack. I don't want to just like overwhelmingly shake the bait a ton. I'm shaking my slack, and what that's doing is it's barely making that bait tremble into the water. To me, I think that triggers more strikes more times than not than just actually just shaking the fire out of tight line. So I had a question on my YouTube channel about Wacky rigs and how I fish them in comparison to bait casting and spinning. So I typically throw a Wacky rig on spinning, I would say 90% of the time. I don't care if it's a Wacky rig straight tail worm like a trick worm or a finesse worm, or even an Ocho or stick worm. Now if I'm throwing like a 6 or 7 inch stick worm like a big Ocho, I will go to bait casting, but I still employ the exact same method. So basically you throw it out there, you can let it sink, let the bait do its work, let it fall, have the right fall rate, get it to the bottom, and then shake it. If you shake it too fast, you will not get as many bites. I promise you guys, I've done it a long time on this wacky rig stuff. The more patient you are with a wacky rig, the more fish you're going to catch, and the bigger the fish you're going to catch. And that's one of the most important aspects of the wacky rigs. You know, when I grew up, one of the very first people I was in the boat with, I fished as a co-angler, and I was at a BFL super tournament. And I know it's really terrible. I don't remember the pro's name that I was with, but he was a guide on I think I was Lake Fork, and he was throwing a wacky rig trick worm, and he was throwing it on a 10-pound test bait casting rod. And he was explaining to me that day that 10-pound test was like the ideal size for that wacky rig. And I'm back there throwing like 15 or 17, and he's catching the fire out of them, and I'm not catching anything. Now, granted, he had the boat pointed towards where the fish were, and I'm just kind of casting out here in nowhere. But once I figured that out, I actually changed my line. I had a spool of 10-pound in there for some reason. I changed it to 10, and I started catching some bass, and I really started fine-tuning that technique the more and more I fished through the years. And then I realized just how efficient and effective it is on spinning gear, because one of the hardest things about a wacky rig is it's really hard to cast on bait casting gear, especially accurately. But on spinning gear, you can be extremely accurate. You can cast that light bait even into the wind. You can fish it more efficiently. So when it comes to line size, I keep it pretty basic. If I'm on a really clear reservoir, I'm using braid fluorocarbon. The braid's 10-pound. The fluorocarbon is going to be anywhere between 6 and 8. If I'm on a grassy place, like in Florida, Potomac River, Gunnersville, Rayburn, I'll go up to like 10 and sometimes 12, but most of the time 10. Dude, 10-pound line on a spinning rod is ultra strong. Like, it takes a lot to break 10-pound line on a spinning rod. I mean, because your drag system's so much better, so much softer, so you don't tend to lose as many fish. That is one of those situations where I think spinning gear absolutely outshines the others. The only time that I'll really throw like a wacky rig on bait casting gear where I'm fishing shallow water is if I'm really up in it, you know, up in bushes and kind of flipping holes. Then I'll actually upsize my line to like 15 to 20-pound line, and I'm doing straight bait casting rod, and I'm just really just fishing for spawners. But 9 times out of 10, if you see me throwing a wacky rig, whether it's a Nico, a regular wacky rig, or one on a flick shake head, it's going to be on a spinning rod, and I'm going to be really patient with it. And, you know, I think that's a huge key, and I think that's something that a lot of guys overlook when it comes to that rig. And I hope this tip is going to help you catch more bass on your wacky rig the next time you're on the water. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I hope y'all learned how to find and catch them using this wacky rig, and I hope you enjoyed this next video.